everybody, welcome to my Suburban Oasis. It is a beautiful evening here in mid-Michigan. We're in the mid-70s, which is a fabulous temperature. And my name is Soleil, and this is a Zone 5B here in mid-Michigan. And we talked a little bit about doing a tour about this woodland garden and talking about the hostas and the hookeras. And so what I thought we would do is stroll the path after talking a little bit about how I developed this and how I came up with it. I get a lot of questions about this woodland garden and what made me decide to put paths in, how I developed it, what I used, where did I get the rocks, all sorts of questions. So I'll try to answer all of those as we go through it. So just to start with, this woodland garden was in non-existence when we got this house about 16 years ago. So if you look down this way and you see this expanse of grass and you see the beautiful hostas and the garden that has been created, all of this was not here. What we had when we began is several of these honeysuckle bushes. These honeysuckle bushes are invasive and they actually have been pruned a bit to look like a tree form. This one is the only one that is left. I left this one for the shade. And I'm continuing to try to replace them with things that I find to be more beautiful and that don't drop hundreds of seeds and create hundreds of little bushes every year that I have to pull out of the paths here. So I had 4 of these all the way down between here and the end. And then you can also see over here to my other side that I had a hickory tree here, which the stump is left. So this was a very large shade tree, probably 60 to 75 feet tall. And so it was quite immense and it provided shade to this whole area. So now I have a small buckthorn tree, this honeysuckle bush, and then I'm starting to, as I said, replace things with some smaller flowering shade trees. So I have this thundercloud purple plum tree, and I have a Cirsus canadensis redbud that is just down at the end. And so in addition to these big 4 bushes, the hickory tree, and yeah, I had also 4 giant yew bushes, and they went all the way from here to the sidewalk of the pool. They were huge. I think they were planted when my house was originally built, which is from 1956. So I moved in about 16 years ago, as I said, and I started cutting those yews back and cutting them back, and they were actually down here. And this hill was actually even more sloped than it is right now. But I had sort of filled it in over the years with lots of leaves, small sticks, and small branches, and that's kind of how it got to be slightly more level, at least in a way that we could use it. So that's kind of the history of that. It really just took a lot of hard work and kind of patience because I didn't have the funds to be able to hire somebody to bring them in to do the work instead of me. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about some of the structural elements in this garden. And so I have stones that I have placed alongside all of the garden beds. And when I started this, I actually started down at the far end over here underneath the hawthorn tree. So this hawthorn tree has been here since I moved in. A couple of the branches have been taken down because they weighed it down and would come down in a way that would cover the path, and you can see some of them are starting to come down now, so I have to continually prune up this hawthorn tree, which is something that I do regularly with many of my trees. I think a lot of people think that you get a tree and you just leave it, but it's really important to make sure that you continue to prune them every year or at least every few years to keep them healthy. So this hawthorn was here, and underneath of it we have this Vinca minor, and surrounding it was a black plastic path edger, I guess you could call it. trying to contain the vinca, because the vinca can be invasive if you just let it be on its own. So what I did just to make it a little more beautiful was to use the rocks. So as I said, I've used the rocks over time, and we've gotten these from multiple different places. We've gotten them from Christmas tree farms, we've gotten them from roadside stands at farms, we've gotten them from Facebook Marketplace, from the neighborhood app, from other people who are just getting rid of their rocks either for a really cheap price or for free. And my husband really puts in the bulk of the labor for that, because he can lift the heavy stones like this one, not me. We also use some tools for that. But so this is the end of the garden where I started, and I began by edging that, and then I added this circular bed to the left. And then we ended up bringing in some topsoil, just to the right of the hickory tree where you see that bunch. And so this was probably about maybe 10 years after I moved in that we started expanding in this direction. And once I started expanding in this direction and had the yew bushes and I had the honeysuckle bushes under control, then I felt like I really had an opportunity to begin planting with that topsoil in place and being able to put the grass in. And again, having to collect all of those rocks from various places so that I had enough to be able to utilize them. But the main place that we got them for these beds was at the Christmas tree farm, where we got our Christmas tree every year. So that was wonderful. All right, well, let's start looking at some of the plants that we have in this garden. So in this garden, I have some plants that are freebies. And whenever you start gardening, I think you're on a pretty strict budget if you're young, and that's how I was. I was, early 30s, maybe late 20s, and I started getting plants from friends. So I got these white-edged hostas, and I got these plain green hostas from a friend. And really, I think I might have had 3 or 4 of them to begin with between the 2 different kinds. And from there, I just continued to divide them every fall, because hostas do really well to be divided every 3 years or so. But if you divide them every year, they will continue to grow on for you and they'll do really well. They're incredibly hardy. Hostas as a whole are usually hardy from zone 3 to zone 9, but always check the label, because sometimes they might not be as hardy or as cold hardy, or as tolerant of the heat. So it's good to check, because some of them will do well in sun and some of them will not. As a general rule, I find that those that have white on their leaves do better for me with a little bit of sunshine, and the ones that are blue and have that waxy coating on them tend to do poorly in the sunshine. I think this is because the wax tends to melt off, and so then the leaves tend to burn. So this Buddha head statue is above 2 fun and games Hookerella Hopscotch. These are from the series by Proven Winners, and Hookerella are a mix of Tiarella and Hookura. So they have a little bit of the different aspects of both. And these have lovely little foamy flowers. And typically Hookerella or Hookura are hardy from about zone 5 to zone 9, but again, check the tags, because some of them are hardier, such as this one. This one is hardy in zones 4 to 9, and it does have beautiful little foamy bells, if you will, at the top. So this is a blue colored hosta with wavy leaves, and it has a wonderful vase-like structure that is not like many other hostas, and this is called Krossa Regal, and this one does the best in more shade. It can take part shade or shade, and I've had this one here for several years now, and it's probably at just about its maximum size. It would likely be wider if the fence was not behind it, but it's simply gorgeous, really beautiful. I highly recommend it. So this giant is the Francis Williams Hosta. and it has a variegation. It has blue, green, and some yellow in it, and it has some really nice looking white flowers. I don't always leave the white flowers or the purple flowers or whatever color they are on my hostas, but if I like the flower, I will leave them because the pollinators enjoy them. And I heard from many of you that in your gardens, the hummingbirds also really enjoy them. You can see the bumblebee on them right now. And this one really gets quite large. I would say probably about 5 feet wide. I have taken divisions off of this one simply by sticking my shovel in the middle and cutting a piece off of the side of it every year for about the last 3 years, and it continues to thrive and be very large. So I don't actually dig the whole thing out of the ground in order to get it out. I love this one. I highly recommend this one as well. You can see a little bit of the waffling or puckering pattern on the leaves, which gives it a little bit of a different texture because it's not so smooth as some of the other hostas. Real quick, I want to talk about this Brunnera, which is the Jack Frost variety. I got this one last year, and I actually divided it into 4 separate pieces, and it did really well. It has beautiful little blue flowers on it that look a lot like forget-me-nots in the springtime, and it's simply gorgeous. I do plan to continue to put that one around the garden further, and it's incredibly hardy. I believe that one is hardy down to zone 4. Let me just think here. Yes, it goes hardy down to -40. So that's really excellent if you're in a cold area. So I think that's zone 3 actually. So up front you'll see the golden Hakonechloa grass, and this is all gold variety. You can get a variety that is also variegated on the leaves, but I really prefer the brightness and the pop of color that this chartreuse gives. It's almost even yellow right now because of the additional sunlight that it's getting this year since we took out the maple tree. This is a really excellent woodland grass. It's from Japan, and it's hardy in zones 5 to 9, and it does well in fairly dry soil, but it is a very slow grower. So it can be fairly expensive at the nursery, but once it establishes itself, you can take divisions. So one of the wonderful things about many of these plants that I'm talking about today is you can simply buy 1, 2, 3, a small number of plants and end up with as many as you want over the years. And so it's an excellent way to save some money. This hosta that you'll see right here on my right hand side is a Substance Hsota. It is quite giant, and since we took out the maple tree, it is showing a little bit of sun stress on the leaves, which is turning the leaves a little bit yellow. But this is a really giant one. This one can get to be probably about 2.5 feet tall to probably about 5 feet wide as it matures. This is its 3rd year in my garden, so it has really pushed out and become much more mature. If you buy a hosta that's supposed to be a really large hosta, they do like a lot of water. So if you want to grow them really well and really big and help them mature faster, add a little bit of fertilizer to them, maybe a little foliar feed, give them plenty of water, and make sure that they are in an excellent, well-drained soil. They can take clay though as well. I have clay soil here, and they absolutely enjoy it because it does hold on to that water. Over here on the other side here to my left, I believe this one is the Komodo dragon. Now, I don't have all of the tags for all of these hostas. Many of them I've bought over the years. I've bought them through catalogs, through mail order. You can get bare root plants for a lot less often than you buy full-grown plants in the nursery. So this one has absolutely flourished since I planted it here. I think this is its 3rd year as well in this particular spot. So this one again has really nice blue leaves. It has a little bit of a wavy structure on it, and then it has just these incredibly nice stripy lines. And many times you'll see these type of giant hosta leaves used as cement molds for bird baths. You'll see people actually use them for that type of craft. So that's a fun thing to do if you're into that kind of thing. This particular hosta right here is called a Striptease Hosta, and I think it's the case because it has this beautiful little strip of white between that chartreuse and the bluish green border. So these are a really beautiful medium-sized hosta. They probably get to be about 24 inches tall by 24 inches wide, at least in my garden. Keep in mind that when you read tags and they give you a size on them, they literally can be, you know, completely different in your garden depending on, you know, your soil, how you water, and those kind of things. So they should be in the general vicinity, but it can be quite different. Next to that one right here, we have Pink Fizz. This is a foamy bells, which is also a Hookerella, and I just love the colors on that one. Right behind that, we have the Japanese Fern, and that one is also hardy down to, I believe, zone 4. And it has some really beautiful colors on it that mix really well in this garden. Finally, back behind this, you'll see a limey green, kind of a plain hosta, and I believe this one is called the Standard Hosta or Hosta Standard. And while it may not look like a lot, it provides a very nice backdrop. And then in August or late in the summertime, I get these gorgeous blooms on them. They're probably my favorite hosta blooms. They're fragrant, they're white, and they are very large, probably twice as large as most of the blooms on the hostas. These are plum pudding heuchera, and they are absolutely beautiful. I love the color of them, and I back planted them this year with the marvelous marble heuchera behind them. So I just think all of these colors play really well in this area. Again, many of these share the same hardiness zone because they're all Hookarella or Hookerella. And you'll see this is the spearmint variety. This one's from Proven Winners. And this one is very similar. The spearmint may have been developed from this one, but I don't actually have the tags for this one. I've had it for so long. So I've also been asked about the lungwort that I have. This lungwort right here is the pretty and pink variety, and I absolutely love it. It has flowers that start out pink and they kind of fade or turn purpley. They have multi-colors to them, and the leaf is really nice and wide and has these beautiful white spots on it that just provide a little pop right here. And it's a very different kind of pattern than you see on many of the other leaves within this garden, so I just love it. Now over here on this side, we have another Hookerella, and this one is called Catching Fire. And you can kind of see how it's got that fiery color in the middle of the lime. And then right in front of it, we have some pig squeak or Virginia. So this hosta is called the June hosta, just like the month June. And it will definitely get bigger than this. It's probably going to get about 2 feet tall and 2 feet wide. I just have one right now here, but I placed that in the fall last year, and it has some beautiful blue around the margins and then a chartreuse or almost yellow in the center. And the color can vary over time depending on, you know, divisions that you take. I have had a couple of these revert to pure blue over time, but I think that's really gorgeous as well. So absolutely wonderful hosta to have. I love that one. Around the edge of this garden, I've placed Patriot Hosta, and I made a lot of divisions this last fall. Again, I bought like 2 of these a long time ago, and then I've just continued to divide them and multiply them over the years. And what I did with these is place them fairly close together. They will get probably about 2 feet wide and about a foot tall. That's what they do in my garden anyways. So they're just starting, and they'll probably take off a whole lot more next year after their roots really get established in this garden. This is one that can take quite a bit of sun. You'll see this one in my garden. I have it in front of my garden shed as well, which is a full sun place setting, and I am in zone 5B. I just want to reiterate that, up in Michigan, and so the northern sunlight is not as strong as the southern sunlight, so that may not be possible in the south, but in some of the northern areas, absolutely this is one that can take quite a bit more sun. Around this circular bed, I've edged with something called Gold Edger Hosta. I like this one because it has a really nice pointy kind of triangular form. There's something more architecturally I can't even say that word. Something more architectural about the shape of this hosta. It stays rather small, but it does spread and become wide. So I would say this one probably gets to be about 8 inches tall by about, I'm going to say about 24 inches wide by the time, because it really does spread and create lots of divisions. So that's why I've been able to break them up over the years and continue to create this bed. It has cute little flowers on it. They're purple, and sometimes I leave them on and sometimes I cut those ones off. But I do think that they have a really nice pop of color. If they get more sun, they will bleach a little bit more and become a little more chartreuse, whereas here in further or deeper shade, the leaves are a little bit more green, and so you can tell the difference from the front of the bed to the back of the bed. In this garden bed, I have Hasta Un Gulatavaragata, and it has these undulating leaves, right? And it's variegated, which speaks directly to its name. And this has been in my garden since I moved here, so I believe that's what it is. That's what I found on the internet when I've searched for something similar to it. There's some new varieties called Fire and Ice that look a little similar to this as well, but I find this one does fairly well in sun. This one can tend to be more prone to slug damage. I did have this closer up to my house in a bed where there was more moisture and more shade, and they did tend to get more bug damage on them. So just a warning on that. They are absolutely beautiful, but they can take a little bit more sun, and I do recommend that they be in a little bit more sun and a little bit of a drier soil. So lots of color right here, and that's because we have the Mahogany Monster Hookura in the back there on the right, and it is absolutely stunning. This one is very large leaf variety. It is by proven winners, and I really enjoy this one just for the size of its leaves. And then right in front, the variegated hosta that you see here is called Autumn Frost, and it has a beautiful blue center with a white, creamy, buttery yellow margin on it. And you'll see I'm beginning to put it along the path. The leaves do have a little bit of a curl to them. I did divide this one last year, so they're very solitary, if you will, right now, but they will get bigger. I believe they will spread a little bit before the end of the summer because they have a very strong growth habit. They will only get probably about 12 to 18 inches high and probably about 24 inches wide. They definitely, as I said, have a fairly strong growth habit, so they could get wider than that, but I haven't had them in my garden for a significant amount of time, so we'll see. Now, to the left of that, the bright chartreuse one is called August Moon, and this one has a tendency to be able to take quite a bit of sun as well. You'll see that the leaves that are catching more sun are turning a bit more yellow rather than the chartreuse, but these are a very strong grower. I don't have any problems with them. They divide readily, and I think they grow in a way that is very symmetrical, if you will, and I just enjoy having them in my garden. And then also right here in the front, this cute little hosta with the wavy edges that is very thin is called Curly Fries. And that one's just a fun one to have in the garden, and I have begun dividing that one as well, and I will use that to edge the border of this bed. So here you'll see I've used many of the same plants with the Mahogany Monster, but the two blue hostas that I have in front here are called Fragrant Blue. As I understand it, the Fragrant Blue hosta actually has zero fragrance to it, but I think they're absolutely stunning in terms of the color blue. From what I hear, they're the most blue hosta that there is, so we'll see if it lives true to its name. The two that are behind those are Halcyon Hosta, also a really well-known variety. It's been around for years and very good performer. I think it was Hosta of the Year one time as well. So fantastic, fantastic blue, blue, blue color on those. And they will get quite big. These were just planted last fall, and they were very small transplants. I bought them in 4-inch containers. So probably the sleep, creep, leap will happen over the next few years. And also in this bed, you'll see the deep purple heucheras. These are called mulberry heucheras, and I really like the color of those. I just think they're um, beautiful. And if you get close up to them, you will see that there is some amazing deep veining in the leaves, which I think is really beautiful. Something you don't see on all of the heucheras, but certainly this one is quite gorgeous. So I get a lot of questions too about how I built these paths and what I did to create them. Like, how did I put them in? Why did I decide to do it the way that I did? Um, And so I just have kind of used materials that I have on hand, things that are cheap, again, low budget gardening here. So I use mulch as the pathway. And as I started, which I started from the far end coming this direction, um, I wanted to make sure I had a place for my bench swing, and that was going underneath of the hickory tree, and that was because I wanted shade. Well, the hickory tree's gone now, but the bench is going to stay there. And then, so I needed a path that went behind that along the fence because the swing wouldn't be able to move up against the fence. And then I wanted to also make sure that the path was curved so that it wasn't just a straight line coming straight through, because then it's just not really interesting. And in addition to that, as I did tasks and chores, I wanted to be able to get the garden cart in and out, and I wanted to be able to get in and out rather quickly as well. So I created all of these smaller beds so that I could just, exit along the pathway wherever I desired or enter in wherever I desired, because it can be a real pain if you're in the middle of a task and you want to go run and get some water and you got to walk all the way to the other end of your garden to get it. So I found it to be a lot more convenient that way. And then I just use the stepping stones that I have because the small 12 by 12 stepping stones in the mulch, those are only about $1 a piece when I first got them, so they're very inexpensive. And then some of the other pavers that I have were ones that I've just reused from other parts of the garden. So I hope that answers some of your questions. It wasn't an area that I dug up sod or anything like that. You certainly can do this the same as you do like a no-till garden bed. You can lay down cardboard over grass and put the mulch very thickly over the top of it and put pavers over it and not have to worry about that grass coming through. But um, I just did it utilizing the space that I had, the dirt that we filled in with, and then again, mulch and these small pavers. So I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit more about my woodland garden today. It's one of my favorite parts of the garden to spend time in. It creates a nice shady resting place, and there's a couple of different places to sit down and relax in the garden. Well, I hope you've enjoyed your weekend. Happy Father's Day to those fathers out there, and happy Juneteenth to everyone else. Thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll see you next time. Bye!